So now the beauty counters at Sephora and Lancome can custom mix your foundation right on the spot to match your skin tone. In this episode, we examine the science behind that technology and why it may or may not work all the time. Hi Skin Deep Geekers, I'm your hostess Nini. If you want to check more information, you can check our website at skindeepgeek.com. And if you would like to check out these videos en español, puedes ir a nuestro canal en español, bellezascienciaabierta.com. Okay, so this is kind of like the latest rave, this skin matching foundation technology. So how does it work? To understand how this works, we have to understand two basic concepts, light and color. So kind of going back to high school physics. So light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Invisible light, which is the light that we can see, that our eyes can perceive, is actually a very small subset of that. So light travels through matter and space and time, both as a wave and a particle. It has properties of both. But today we're going to focus on the properties of light as a wave. That's what's relevant to this discussion. So a wave usually has a maximum point and it's got a minimum point. These are defined as the crest and the trough. So the difference between these 2 points are actually coined the amplitude of a wave or the intensity of a wave. And it's usually given in units of energy, of electric or magnetic energy. So in addition to the amplitude, you can also measure a wave by measuring the distance between consecutive peaks. So this distance is actually called the wavelength, also known mathematically as lambda. And the wavelength of a wave can either be short or long depending on the properties of the wave and depending on the energy of the wave. So waves that have shorter wavelengths occur more frequently per unit of time. So if you were to capture that wave in a unit of time, let's say a second, you would notice that there's more cycles per second. So they occur more frequently, and thus we say that they are higher frequency and therefore more energetic. But that's not in this discussion. So at the same time, a wave can have longer wavelengths. And when it has longer wavelengths, we can see that in a unit of time, it's occurring less frequently. There's less cycles per second or less cycles per unit of time. So it's a lower frequency. In the visible light spectrum, red lights usually have the longer wavelengths. The blue-violet lights have the shorter wavelengths, like 400 nanometers. That's a billionth of a meter. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter. And light can usually be transmitted, it can be reflected, or it could be absorbed. So now let's talk about colors. So why is an apple red? So an apple is red not because it's giving off any energy. It actually is red because it has pigments in it that are absorbing all of the wavelengths of light except the red one. So they're actually reflecting all of the wavelengths that could be like orange or red tones. So similarly, our skin color is defined by the different combinations of melanin in our skin tone. And so these different combinations of melanin are either going to absorb or reflect certain wavelengths of light. So when an object is black, it's absorbing all of the light. And when it's white, it's actually reflecting all of the light. So all of the light wavelengths. So now we go back to the foundation. How do we put this all together? So the technology is actually called a spectrophotometer. Spectrophotometer, it's measuring photons. Photons are really, a way of quantifying light. So here's how it works. It's using a white source of light, usually a tungsten bulb or LED. And white light has all the wavelengths of light, and it's flooding your skin with that white light. Well, it turns out that because your skin has melanin, it's got a certain tone that's either going to absorb or reflect wavelengths of light. Your skin in turn is going to absorb all of the wavelengths of light that are not its skin tone. So it's reflecting all of the wavelengths of light associated with your skin tone. So now at the other end, there are these detectors or filters that are capturing and kind of detecting these different wavelengths of light. It's saying, oh, okay, this person has red, this person has yellow, this person has orange. So how do we turn then that information into identifying how much of each do you have? For instance, I may have more yellow tones than another person who has more red tones in their skin. So it turns out that this information or this signal captured by the detectors is fed through a fiber optic into a photodiode, and that in turn gives us the intensity of each of these wavelengths. So a photodiode is an active element, an active circuit element that turns light into a voltage, a difference, or a current. So by taking all of this information and putting it through a detector and then a photodiode, you have two things. You have the wavelength and you have the amplitude of the wavelength, or the intensity of the wavelength. That's telling you how much of that wavelength you have. Now, all of that information is then taken through a circuit that pretty much tells the machine to mix in a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, a little bit of red, depending on what you have. And voila, that's how you get the custom foundation mixed on the spot. So why doesn't this always work? Some people have actually complained that it doesn't produce the right match. Well, it turns out that, as all technical gadgets, it's limited by resolution. So there may not be enough detectors to measure the exact wavelength of light, or it may be just approximating the intensity. And this all has to do with converting what we call an analog or real-time signal into a digital signal. In doing so, you lose resolution, and so the match may not be exact. So that's it. That's how this technology works. And if you've really enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and share it and subscribe to our channel. And remember that real beauty starts with science.